Now, what is the conceptual sort of development model? What are the principles? Basically, it's based on the assumption that the poor and the landless and assetless have the capacity and are willing to undertake development activities to improve their situation. The RSPs as support organizations enable this potential to be harnessed through a process of, number one, of course, is the social guidance, which basically socially organizes them. Because unless the poor come in an organized fold, individually they cannot be helped. That's what Raiffeisen held. And the second thing is that how do we help them to unleash the potential they have? This is done by upgrading human skills of the poor, such as managerial, productive, cooperative. This enables them to make the best use of the available resources. And of course, everybody knows that capital is power. So, as they say, capital attracts. So unless until they follow a discipline of savings, unless they generate their own capital, they will not be able to attract money from outside. Now, why I'm so firm about following this approach and these principles, in fact, my colleagues in RSP get tired of it, illustrating this again and again. But the fact is that, as Dr. Amit Khan said, that it is as precise as the law of gravity, so I cannot really deviate. And I was very happy when the first assessment of the AKRSP done by World Bank after 5 years, they observed, and I quote, "The order of priorities and phasing of AKRSP is unique. The institutional model is well honed, and the early and almost exclusive emphasis on institutional building deserves special attention. In some respects, the first 4 years of AKRSP correspond to the missing years in many delayed rural development schemes in the world." And in their next assessment after 10 years, they concluded that from 1982 to 1991, the per capita income in the program area was estimated to have doubled in real terms. In their other assessments, they did 4 really. In one, they stated economic rates of return among the best compared to other similar programs internationally, 16% to 33%. In these ranges are well above the opportunity cost of capital, assured for Pakistan to be only 12%. In fact, in 2007, they brought out a book called Ending Poverty in South Asia, Ideas That Work. And this is what they wrote about, and I quote, "Pakistan experience with rural support programs demonstrates that social mobilization can work on a large scale, even in unfavorable climate of low growth, high poverty, weak democracy, and frequent changes of regime." In fact, in 1991, the SAARC heads of the state had set up an independent South Asia Commission for Poverty Alleviation. And the commission went to all the South Asian countries and also looked at AKRSP. And in fact, they recommended that the centerpiece of a policy framework for poverty alleviation has to be the mobilization of the poor in order to enable them to participate directly in the decisions that affect their lives and prospects. And they continued, they called it a socio-economic pillar to social guidance cannot be undertaken by government departments or NGOs. They're talking of a countrywide program. It requires an institutional mechanism which has the resources of the government and flexibility of an NGO, such as the Rural Support Program. And this was their overarching recommendation to the South Asian heads of states. Governments of South Asia should support financially and administratively the establishment of independent, non-governmental and national level support mechanisms to catalyze formation of organizations. Now, this is what this three-tier structure of the communities, the institutions of the people, takes the shape, beginning with the CEO with 15 to 25 households, and then federating at VO when about 80% of these households have been organized in COs, and then federating at LSO, with whom we will be listening today. That is at the Union Council level as far as Pakistan is concerned. In India, it was Mandal, and every country, you know, has their own. So if you're looking for a holistic model, which this is what it is, there has to be social organization, there has to be human resource development. At credit and savings, basically, in terms of support, the main thing here is the Community Investment Fund. There's a lot of confusion about CIF, but CIF is something which the people themselves want to engage in. We do not go with a preconceived package that what they should do. They identify what they are capable of doing, and this is directly linked to the potential that I talked earlier. It is interest-free, but it is a revolving fund. They're supposed to use it, return it, and then take it again. Then, of course, technical assistance in natural resource management, development of physical infrastructure, and the most important, linkages with government departments, because this whole structure, this three-tier structure that I spoke about, the purpose is that this should be used by government departments as a conduit for delivery of their services and supplies. If they don't do that, then the whole objective and the whole idea of putting them out, not only out of subsistence, but making them really much above that, that only happens because all the resources are with government, and unless government resources are channeled through these organized communities, because poverty is at the household level. And none of the government departments, whatever they may do, it is just not possible to reach each and every household. And RSPs, through these organized communities, make that possible. And that is what, basically, wherever it has happened, whether it was in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral, or in India, the people, of course, came over the poverty very quickly. And again, I'll present another, which is external performance monitoring, which the EU undertakes regularly. This was probably the third mission. And they came to the conclusion that the poor segments and women were well targeted by RSP interventions. 99% of LSOs were managing CIF and 78% LSOs were revolving CIF. 86% of TVSC, this is the vocational training, which is for a very small number, unlike CIF. So there 45% beneficiaries had no jobs before. So there were almost creation of 41% new employment. And in terms of income, they showed that 1 to 3,000 with 64% CIF, 3 to 6,000 bracket, there were 29%, and 6,000 above 7. Of course, there was more investment in vocational training and the incomes also. But it was basically, the issue here is that how many people we want to reach. Do we want to only help a few and then leave the others? The whole approach, I mean, and success, for example, we are supposed to organized 750,000 households, and out of which 450,000 are below the poverty line. So whole objective is to reach them, and CIF is the only one which really can, if you get the money, although at that also the money is only about 30%. What the EU monitoring said that the CAT session, this awareness session, increased social awareness, importance of education, health and hygiene, vaccination, registration of birth, CNIC registration, Nikah-Nama. Women have realized the importance of organization and their role in poverty reduction. Women leadership created at local level self-help initiatives. Exposure to women, importance of women participation in joint, this is a new thing, government sitting with them, and women's exposure and linkages with it. And community resource persons, in the COVID-19, their response was amazing. Now, what we did in Pakistan, it had a regional impact, especially in India. In 2015, the Andhra project with World Bank, they said the origins of Andhra poverty reduction in the UNDP-supported South Asia Poverty Alleviation Program based on experience, including a rural support program. The Indian Minister for Rural Development in 2012 wrote, Shoaib Khan pioneered the concept through his landmark Aga Khan Rural Support Program in Pakistan. With the support of UNDP, he introduced the concept of poverty reduction through South Asian Poverty Program in India, which led to a full-fledged program and the Society for Elimination of Rural Poverty in Andhra Pradesh with support of World Bank. The project has seen the journey of over 10 million organized households from despair to hope, from diffidence to confidence, from subjugation to empowerment in the last decade. The spirit of community empowerment has continued to thrive in India since then. At the behest of Mr. Rahul Gandhi, Member of Parliament, Mr. Khan visited Uttar Pradesh and helped to reformulate the vision of Rajiv Gandhi Development Program, founded on the same set of core values and beliefs, and thus has much to benefit from Shoaib Khan's vision and effort. Indian Minister for Rural Development, Jairam Ramesh. The India World Bank Vice President once went with me to Indira. And then on her return, she sent me this email, and I quote, Shoaib Sultan Khan is a world-renowned expert in rural development and winner of Ramon Magsaysay Award. His pioneering work in India with the World Bank and Andhra Pradesh Poverty Reduction Project inspired setting up of India's National Rural Livelihoods Mission. This is the RGMVP website, and the Government of India's 5.1 billion National Rural Livelihood Mission is one of the world's largest initiatives to improve the livelihood of poor rural people. Household 70 million, comprising 350 million population. This is Robert Zaga, Country Director, World Bank. Miko Nishimoto, one of the vice presidents of the bank, was a great supporter of this program. In fact, after visiting AKRSP, she started in the bank VIP, Village Immersion Program, where bank sector managers would come and spend 15 days in the villages. I took her to Andhra. She wrote this to me. I quote, I have just returned to Washington and did not want my time pass on by before sending you a note of deep appreciation for making my dream visit to AP possible. Every time I visit South Asia, I learn and grow as a professional. But the visit to India with you was extraordinary in many ways. I gained invaluable insights into the foundations of poverty alleviation as an economist and a development banker. I feel I also grew a little wiser, perhaps as a human being. That fire in my belly is definitely back again, and so are the stars in my eyes. It was one of those trips I wished never to end, and felt as if I lived 1,000 lives now that it has ended. I do not know how to thank you enough. Thank you all the same from the bottom of my heart and with my soul. Miko Nishimoto, Vice President, the World Bank. Thank you very much.